Good afternoon. This is Miller. My name is Miller. I'm an addict. Welcome to the 13th edition of the Addiction Show. And I want to welcome our guest today, Manny A. Welcome, Manny.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
It's great to have you here. And I want to do a little introduction.
Okay.
All right. So you've been in recovery about 6 weeks longer than I have, and I met you in early recovery at a meeting and at Survival, I believe. And I heard you share, I heard you speak, and I saw you, and I thought, this is a cool guy. I'd like to know this person. I'd like him to be a friend. You know, our culture really doesn't permit that. We don't go up in the street and say, you're pretty cool. I'd like you to be my friend. If you do, you might get hit or arrested in this town, depending. So what I did is I invited you to do a service commitment that I had to go into work release so I could facilitate that friendship. And I picked you up and we went, you kindly went to the work release with me, picked you up in you were single, a small, pretty unfurnished apartment in Coral Gables. And our relationship hasn't been interrupted in 33 years, something like that.
31.
31.
Mm-hmm.
See, I lose track if you're.
That's right.
So welcome. So let's dive right in. You're an addict. When did you know you were an addict? Give us a little bit of your story, and I'll interrupt you whenever I see fit.
When did I know that I was an addict? Well, I started my recovery in treatment. Someone had tried to.
Well, you woke up one day and you were in treatment?
No. I didn't wake up. I didn't wake up one day and I was in treatment, but I woke up one day from a pretty bad run, and I asked for help. But somebody had tried to help me before, and had taken me to a meeting like 4 months before I actually woke up from that nightmare, and I thought I could do it on my own. I thought there was something going on. I mean, the way that I was using, the way that I couldn't stop, what was happening, the isolation, the dishonesty, the not being there for commitments, letting people down, letting my family down, letting people down in my business. So when I asked for help, my family reached out to a friend of mine who had been in treatment, and we got together and they came together, and they kind of had a plan of what I should do, which was basically what he did. He went to treatment locally here at South Miami Hospital when they used to have a treatment facility, and that's where I started.
At what point did you get some hope that you could do this, that it could get better, that it right away in treatment, or did it take some time, or?
No, things started happening pretty quickly. I went into treatment on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, Wednesday morning.
So you would crawl through Halloween, and by Thanksgiving.
No, Thanksgiving was free for all. Thursday, Friday, nobody working. It was there was no excuse. It's a very long weekend. It was a very long weekend, and
so you went into treatment.
I went into treatment on Wednesday morning. On Friday. Since I had been already there for a little over 2 days, they were allowing me to walk over to the meeting across the street.
Boy, they didn't. When I went to South Miami, they didn't let me. They didn't even let me out of that room for 3 weeks. They didn't let me go downstairs or do another.
Yeah, but you were really sick, probably.
Some are sicker than others.
Some of us get in.
So you got well right away. This is wonderful.
I didn't get well right away.
But they let you go to a meeting.
But they let me go to a meeting. Before that, we couldn't. There was in-house meetings where they would take us to a little room and somebody would come in, like what we do at hospitals and institutions, where we bring or try to bring the message to those.
When people came in when I was in treatment to H&I for hospitals and institutions to share a meeting. I felt either I didn't understand. I thought, well, maybe they're getting paid to come in. Why would a person take a perfectly good Wednesday night or Thursday night or Tuesday night and take the time out and come to a hospital? Oh my God, that's where sick people are, and do yakety yak. And I would take notes, not that I could read them later, but I really didn't understand.
You would take notes?
I did. I think
you see, that's why for 3 weeks they wouldn't let you. So, anyways, let me tell you the story. Yeah. So we're walking across. We had to cross the street. It was an old church that turned into an auditorium, and I look, and the Metro Rail was there, and I thought, it's Friday, I'm gone, and I turned to a person that I had been friendly with, and he told me something that was probably the beginning of that. Something is happening moment. He says, I'll go with you, but let's go tomorrow. And I just kind of looked, and I said, you go tomorrow? Yeah. Right now, let's just go to the meeting, and I'll go with you tomorrow. And that's what I did. We went across the street. I went to the meeting, and that was the first time in a long, long time where I had thought about using and I didn't use, because that's not how it was before. If the thought came, I would say, okay, I'm going to go use. And there was really nothing that I could do about it. And at that moment, that was one of the first things that happened that I on my road to recovery.
So by tomorrow, you didn't have that same obsession to use.
No, by the end of the meeting, I didn't have that same obsession. We walked back. I mean, I was walking the same street, across the same street, and going back, and I just.
Obsession is a funny thing. Jeff G., who's still around after almost 40 years, I think in Atlanta, talks about when you have an obsession, think of it as a cloud, or look at a cloud. And it takes about 10 minutes for a cloud to go across the sky.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, it's the obsession will have lifted. That doesn't mean it won't come back again. You doubt that?
No. Well, it's, the obsession is powerful.
It is powerful.
It's not a thing.
It does lift, though.
Yeah, it does
lift. It
lift.
lifted for you by the end of the meeting.
I know it lifted for me, but I was in a different setting. I had gone to a meeting. I had probably heard somebody sharing and others raising their hand and talking and stuff like.
You were filling up with recovery,
yeah,
which pushes out the recession.
Well, I don't know if it's a push or whatever it is, but it's I don't know. That's a very simple metaphor.
So speaking of sick shit, Fox's is back.
Okay.
Fox's was also right across the street.
Yes.
From
the darkest bar in Miami.
That's how they're. And I used to hear stories all the time. About people going to treatment, getting out, and going right over to Fox's and using. This disease is baffling, and powerful, certainly. And that's proven itself now more than ever with all the deaths, all the fentanyl deaths, all the 108,000 people last year. So I feel like we know most of them, or some of them, having lost their lives, with a needle in their arm, locked in the bathroom, in their 20s. But there is hope. We're fighting back, not only by going to meetings, but also, nowadays there's a Miami Recovery Project, as an example, that's passing out Narcan, to free Narcan from the Department of Children and Families to battle against people laying there dead. You give them the Narcan, and they come back if you get them soon enough. And by the way, before I forget, on my Recovery Project, the end of the month, you're a graduate of University of Miami.
Yes.
They're doing some great things in recovery, which is welcome news in this community. The Sandler Center at the university is sponsoring Overdose Recovery Day on the 31st, the end of the month, with all different kinds of programs and we'll be putting up a flyer, I guess, the next show regarding that. But there is some pushback. We're not taking, this is an action program, and you do plenty of action. You sponsor people.
Yes.
And what has that been like for you, sponsoring people, Manny?
It's sponsorship is a wonderful relationship with addicts that are trying to get into recovery or have taken that step in recovery. But it's like the teaching also. It keeps the lesson fresh for me too. It's a two-way street, the whole sponsorship concept. And for one, it gets you out of yourself. The addiction is a very selfish disease. It's all about me, and I want, and I need it, and when whatever I need to do to get it, and it doesn't matter who I hurt or what I have to do. That's basically it. But to step out of me and work steps like my sponsor worked with me. I work the steps that my sponsor gives me. I'm going down a road that's already been laid out for me. Somebody has already been. We're very fortunate. This is, that we have recovery, that we have the steps, that we have the meetings, that we have the kind of network that we have here. I'll tell you a funny story if I can. I went to treatment in Mississippi, and I didn't want to come back.
So you were being punished. You had to go to Mississippi.
I was in Mississippi for 4 months. You see, I made fun of you, but I don't know.
You got to go to a church on day 2. I waited 3 weeks, but then you went to Mississippi for 4 months.
But you didn't have to go to long term, did you?
No,
I did. So I went to 3 months.
I've been in long term now for 34 years.
3 months in a long term treatment facility.
And what did they teach you there?
It's not teaching. It's just 100% program. You're in meetings. You go to a meeting a day, once a day.
And it's in the middle of nowhere, right? So you don't have other
in the middle of nowhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you're in Jackson, Mississippi, in the outskirts. It was called Copac. It was for doctors and pilots, Eastern airline pilots. That's how far back that was.
Maybe that's why there's no more Eastern.
Well,
no.
I'm sure the airlines still have issues with their pilots. And then I went to a 3-quarter warehouse in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, which was down the street from Jackson. And I remember meeting with my counselor and telling them that I didn't want to go back. Some of it was shame, that I'm an addict, there was a lot of that. When I was in the hospital, I would cover up my bracelet. So if I ran into somebody, that they wouldn't see it.
Somebody else with a bracelet.
If somebody else with a bracelet, I would have seen it, but I didn't care. It's in the cafeteria.
What was that like? Stay there a second. What was that like having that, not meeting the expectations that you felt either you or others had set for you by ending up, by definition, historically, an addict is just a low life, under the bridge mofo. I mean, just not a person that you want your kids to associate with.
Right.
And then what happens when you're one of those kids? How is it with your family, with your friends, with your profession? What was that like having to?
It was a process.
To come clean.
It was a process. My parents were delighted that I was doing something about.
They knew there was a problem.
Oh, they knew there was a problem. So my whole family was very supportive. Then came the professional part, and it was a process. And Miller, this is a disease. This isn't. The other day and we keep going off.
It's not like a cold that you'll feel better next week.
Well, if you had cancer and you needed treatment and you needed to do something about it, or there was some sort of maintenance that you needed to, you wouldn't hesitate. You wouldn't feel shame about it. You wouldn't feel this negativity about yourself. Look, I'm sick. And there is a really, really big component of this that is a disease, and people, they think it's all mental. That if they think it's a choice. Yeah,
that you're the one that put this drug in your system.
Mm-hmm.
If you hadn't put that drug in your system, you wouldn't be high today. Maybe you wouldn't have crashed that car. Maybe you wouldn't have rob that bank. Maybe you wouldn't have spoken to that person that way. All this stuff. Gee, if you hadn't done that.
Right.
So how do we convey that on one hand it's a disease, because people think a disease you don't have a choice, you get it, and then hopefully you get better from it or you get sicker and die. So if it's a choice of using, because you still have the disease,
yeah. Well,
but you're not feeding into it,
right? Yeah, I'm not, but I do something about it constantly because I don't want to. I mean, it gets easier, but I'm not out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination. Not because of anything, but because I see it. I see people with a lot of clean time, a lot of not having used and we consider alcohol a drug. So, and I see them how they go back out and they come back in and they're all beat up. And so I trust that, I honestly, the other part of it is that I don't need it to have fun, I became so.
What do you do on a daily basis to protect yourself?
I I do my prayers and meditations first thing in the morning. I connect with God. That's that I need to do that.
So you have a toolbox.
Yeah,
So part of your toolbox is prayer and meditation.
prayer and meditation. At this point in my life, some of my best friends and my circle of acquaintances are mostly recovering addicts. Not all, but I mean, I'm married. My wife is not an addict, and we do things with people that are not addicts, and they drink.
Does she support your recovery?
100%.
Does she understand your recovery?
No. She doesn't understand because she didn't see that,
right,
the ugly side of it. She didn't see the other Manny. She met somebody, that was 20 years clean. Oh, maybe not, maybe 18 years clean. And it wasn't the insanity of, I mean, we would not have lasted. I couldn't have a relationship before. I would tell my girlfriend that I'll go pick you up. I went and I copped before, and
that was the end
Sunday
of that.
I was somewhere else. She hadn't heard from me in 3 days.
I said I'd pick you up. I didn't say it would be today.
Right. I mean, we laugh about it, but it's like that. The other person on the other side is like, they're probably angry, but they're probably also like, hurt too. That what's happening to.
What other miracles have happened in your recovery?
Oh, well, the fact that I'm still clean, that I'm still alive. I got clean when I was 30 years old. And it's funny, I mentioned at a meeting that I didn't think I was going to make it to 40. I was going to make it to 31 the way I was using. One of my systems was going to let go, or I was going to have an accident, or something was going to happen to me. And if not permanent, like dying, I've seen people get very, very hurt, the physical and medical consequences. Miracles have been a family, the children, the love of friends and acquaintances and it's just my life was.
You work today?
Yeah, I work today.
Work hard.
Yeah, every day. A job.
Pay your bills.
Pay my bills. Yeah. I guess we we take those things for granted, but back then it was such a struggle. I remember driving to work, and I hadn't slept for 3 days, and I was looking at the guy next to me on US 1 going up, towards downtown, and I wanted to be him. I wanted to be the guy. I said, I want to be like this guy. He's probably slept, had breakfast. He hasn't been up for 3 days, and he's going to work. All that being normal was like, at that point was, I was suicidal too. There were times where I just wanted to end it all, and I couldn't do it. I didn't know how to do it.
Right. So, but you thought about it.
Oh, I sat on a window ledge. and I wanted to jump 13 stories high.
What brought you back
actually,
in?
it was the 14th floor, but
Because they don't have 13.
Yeah, they don't have.
You're
13.
lucky because
That was my lucky.
you wouldn't have.
Yes.
Another floor, you would have probably,
Yeah. So yeah.
What pulled you back in the window?
Something that just told me, don't let go. If if it's gonna end, don't end it this way. Not like this. So.
But how did you envision it ending then?
I don't know. It's just, I mean, when you're sitting on a ledge, you're talking, there's a conversation going on.
Yakety yak.
Yeah. It's not like everything is quiet,
Right.
There's a lot of noise. And part of that noise was, pulled me back in.
So you went back in and cried.
Yeah. And kept on using.
I kept using.
Yeah.
So you went to treatment. Have you ever you picked up one white chip?
One white chip.
My experience is that people out that a long time in recovery and then go out, many of them, when they come back in, when they go back out, a little in and out, and like by tomorrow I'll stop using again. They don't make it. We could list the names, and I'm not gonna. But I don't know why. I don't know why that is. You'd think with all that experience and all that recovery, and then they go back out, and many of them are dead a short time later. They don't get a break.
They told me at the beginning. They said the first one, the first time you stay clean. I had tried. I got clean in November, like I said, right before Thanksgiving. In August, somebody had taken me to a meeting, and and the irony of it was.
Do you remember that meeting?
I remember the meeting, and I remember who took me. It was my drug dealer. The guy used to sell me drugs.
See, and you said that that's pretty sick when you're on drug dealer. Takes you to a meeting.
I'm gonna
say, my other guy's not so bad. You're going to a meeting.
I'm gonna take you to a meeting.
Yeah. And where's your drug dealer today? We don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. I don't know.
I cared about.
I mean, that's one of the first things that we got to do. We got to cut off all of that.
He wanted you to just be a functioning addict.
Well,
which is kind of an oxymoron.
Maybe he was looking after his business.
Maybe yeah.
I don't know what it was, but I think it's pure ironic. So,
what's been your biggest surprise in recovery?
My biggest surprise has been the power of this disease.
Address it.
My sponsor told me once, he said, and this happened lately, that there's only one bottom, real bottom, which is death. Because jails, institutions, and death, we go to jail, come back out and use. So that wasn't really a bottom. We go to institutions and treatment, and people have gone to multiple treatment facilities and they come back out. But you die and you can't use again. And that is a lie. Well, that is not true. I'm in a meeting and I'm listening to a story of a girl who flatlined. She was dead. They brought her back. Okay. And the first thing that she did is she went back out and used. So she had died from this disease and they brought her back. So to me, it's really scary how powerful it is and how it just keeps going, and if I don't do something about it on a regular basis, I'll drift.
So the disease is very powerful, but recovery is very powerful also.
Yeah, and it's one day at a time. One of the most important things and one of the greatest gifts for me has been to live one day at a time. The ability to live one day at a time, and also have been the spiritual tools. When you talked about that toolbox, what a gift to be able to, because the spiritual tool is not just in how we work the steps and the things that we learn from it. It's my network of being able out to reach. You were one of the first persons. You were the person, and you're my sponsee that I reached out when I was going through a really tough time in my life.
So I was at a meeting last week that this newcomer was sharing about how he knows his sponsor is busy, so he has all this shit going on, but he doesn't want to call the sponsor. He doesn't want to bother him.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of talked to him after the meeting and said, "You don't understand. You're doing him a favor.
Mm-hmm.
He needs you as much as you need him. I mean, you referred to that earlier about that it's a two-way street, but he needs, when I call you, I used to think, well, I don't want to bother Manny, but I've known over time that I don't care. I it's good for you too. It's going to be good for you for me to call you and take you out of yourself. And when my guys call me, it is a two-way street, and it's a miracle of the program. I want to before we're going to close in a couple of minutes, but before we do, I want to mention we have a sponsor, Dr. David Cabanzan, a dental boutique in South Miami, and my producer Andres. Andres, thank you today. By the way, if you could put up his information, that'd be great. So when I got clean, what remained dirty until I took care of it was my mouth. It was the gums were bleeding. It was nasty. It was residual wreckage of my past, having a dirty taste and needing to be cleaned up. And Dr. Cabazan has, you see, lovely smile.
I know you smile now.
I do now. I used to.
I know.
I know. So
we gotta, and there we all have those consequences.
So if you have a dirty mouth, or you have a mouth that needs work, and you don't know who to call Dr. David. I got an email the other day as a result of the show. Somebody called him, is now a patient, and we appreciate his sponsorship. So clean your mouth up. We appreciate that. I also want to just mention again, Miami Recovery Project. They're the hub of this wheel in this town. This is, when you and I went to treatment, it was South Miami Hospital. If you didn't know what to do, if you didn't know who to call, you go to South Miami, you talk to Dr. Henkes or later Rick or whoever, and you get some help, not only maybe for addiction, but other.
And Howard.
You get, we don't know when they clean you up, what's going on there. They figured that out. And then when South Miami closed, when Baptist bought them and they closed the recovery process, we had a vacuum for a long time here. We had a couple some treatment centers in town, New Hope, our friend Steve Alvarez down at Homestead, Better Way, Banyan, a couple others. Well, now Miami Recovery Project is filling that void as a reference center. They're doing peer training. They're doing referral services. If you call and have a problem, call them. They're doing overdose training and Narcan distribution through Department of Children and Families, and we appreciate the good work that they're doing. We didn't have that before. What message would you? We've got 2 minutes. What message would you like to give to somebody out there who's using it, just feels hopeless and helpless and doesn't see that there's a way out? What would spend a minute and a half addressing that process and that they're not alone?
There is a solution. There is something that can be done. Hopeless is not the state that you need to stay and be in. The sad thing about this thing is that recovery is for people who want it, not who need it. There's so many people who need it. And I wish that we could come up with a way, or there was a way that we could make people understand that they need it, that you can raise your bottom. You talked about at first that we relate to, or the way that we were brought up to relate to what an addict was, just a Skid Row bum, the guy under the bridge. You don't need to get there to get the help. You don't need to go that far down in order to do something about your disease. there's nothing wrong with you that cannot be healed, that cannot be that there's something that can be done. I mean, we basically don't heal from it, but there's something that we can do.
Before we go, I want to do a shout out to my son, Josh Myers, Sergeant Myers. He's in the United States Air Force in Germany.
Hey, Josh.
Hey, Josh, man. He says, hey, Josh.
Enjoying your jiu-jitsu?
He is enjoying his jiu-jitsu. Josh, thank you for your service and be safe. Manny, thank you very much, man. I love you, brother.
Love you.
Take care.
Okay.
We're done.